Welcome to the Explainer. Today we're actually taking a little detour from our usual data sets to dissect a completely different kind of case study. We are going to break down the actual anatomy of a haunting. Looking through the lens of survival psychology, we're going to track the terrifying minute-by-minute journey of a man named Raghu on one seriously dark, stormy night. We'll analyze exactly how a supernatural trap gets set, how our own human desperation totally blinds us to danger, and how spirits of the past manage to ensnare the living. So prepare yourselves, because the architecture of this nightmare is absolutely chilling.
Are you lost, Babu? Take a second and just feel the weight of that question. Out of the pitch black, a shadowy figure named Ratan just appears. Raghu is totally exhausted, physically dragging his bicycle because the main road to his destination, Kusumpur, is completely blocked by fallen trees. Now this simple, seemingly helpful question, that marks the exact moment the trap springs shut. The really crucial takeaway here is that malevolence almost always disguises itself as salvation when we're at our absolute most vulnerable. To really understand why Raghu fell into this trap, we kinda have to put ourselves in his environment. Picture this. You've got an ashen gray sky that just suddenly collapses into this massive torrential downpour. The wind is literally howling, lightning is striking nonstop, and the road ahead is completely erased by a blinding sheet of rain. Raghu is physically battered. He is desperate for absolutely any kind of shelter. And this extreme sensory overload, it basically acts as a perfect smokescreen for the horrors that are about to unfold.
So I want to pose a question directly to you. Would you follow a shadowy stranger into the dark to escape a deadly storm? I mean, it's really easy for us, right? Sitting comfortably in the light to say, oh, absolutely not, no way. But when your core temperature is rapidly dropping and a total stranger offers you a warm fire at a nearby tea stall, your raw survival instincts completely override your logical boundaries. You are placed right there in Raghu's shoes.
And this is exactly where Raghu's situational awareness completely fails him. Systematically, we see these massive environmental red flags just being ignored. First, from the very second Ratan approaches, Raghu notices a persistent smell of burnt flesh lingering in the damp rain. That is a massive biological warning sign. Second, the destination is this solitary, incredibly creepy hut sitting right beneath a Gadieb tree. And third, it's a tea stall fully operating in total, completely illogical isolation.
To his credit, Raghu actually asks the right question as he sits down to drink his tea. He says, "Who visits a tea stall in the middle of nowhere during a storm?" Now, Ratan's response absolutely should have sent him running back out into the rain. Ratan says there used to be a bus stand nearby, but now only people like you visit. The chilling implication here is that this stall isn't serving the general public. It's catching strays. It's a literal spider web, specifically designed for lost, desperate travelers.
Okay, notice this detail, because it slowly cranks up the psychological tension. As Raghu is sitting there, the storm outside is raging. The wind is violently howling against the walls. But inside, there's a hurricane lamp with a flame that is completely unblinking. It doesn't flicker, it doesn't waver even a little bit. That is physically, supernaturally impossible. Raghu slowly starts to feel like everything around him is just this carefully constructed illusion, like a net silently wrapping around him. Let's look at how this timeline actually builds, because it perfectly maps out the whole boiling frog effect of suspense. Early in the night, the trap gets set through hospitality. Then, by midnight, the impossible physics of that unblinking flame start to crack Raghu's sense of reality. And then deep into the night, Ratan's wife, Jumar, enters to offer Raghu a traditional pan, a betel leaf. And this right here is the exact moment the subtle dread just straight up escalates into visceral horror. Because as Jumar hands him the leaf, the atmosphere aggressively shifts. That earlier, distant smell of burnt flesh is suddenly replaced by something immediate and horrifying. A pungent, sickening scent just violently hits Raghu's nose. It smells exactly like raw, metallic blood. The illusion of these welcoming, friendly hosts is literally rotting right in front of him. Just as he takes the leaf, a sudden gust of wind violently blows Jumar's veil aside, and right across her neck is a deep, gaping gash, actively pouring a thin stream of fresh blood. Before Raghu can even process the scream rising up in his throat, she quickly fixes her veil and just vanishes into thin air. He's left sitting there, completely paralyzed, forced to blindly chew the leaf while Ratan silently lowers that impossible lamp. Left completely alone in the dark, Raghu is now trapped in this incredibly isolated soundscape. It's a symphony of terror. There's this suffocating, dead silence, punctuated only by the relentless chirping of crickets. And then, from the bushes, comes the chilling howl of a hungry jackal. Finally, a black owl lands right in the gabe tree outside, letting out an ominous screech. He is entirely, completely cut off from the world of the living.
Exhaustion does eventually drag him into a really fitful sleep, but he is suddenly jolted awake by a horrific sound. He hears the agonizing creak of a strained rope. He looks over, and right there, literally just an arm's length away in the pitch dark, is the silhouette of a man swinging violently by his neck from the ceiling. Pure panic explodes. But then, Ratan casually calls out to him from the porch, asking if he had a bad dream. Raghu looks back, and the swinging body is just gone.
So, let's look into the shadows of the past and Ratan's midnight confession.
Absolutely unable to stay in that room, a sweat-drenched Raghu joins Ratan out on the porch, where Ratan basically offers to pass the time with a story. He clinically details this grim history, a true crime of passion. He says a tea stall owner marries a beautiful woman from another village. A regular customer named Shankar starts lingering a little too long. Then, one afternoon, the husband leaves for the market, but expecting a storm, he catches an early bus back to ensure his wife's safety. He looks through the window and discovers his wife and Shankar laughing in bed together. In a blind rage, the husband slashes his wife's throat and then literally hangs Shankar from the ceiling beams.
But the horror doesn't end with the murders. Consumed by betrayal, staring at this bloody aftermath, the husband completely snaps. He grabs a burning lantern and hurls it directly onto his wife's body. The storm outside fuels the flames, and the hut quickly becomes this tragic inferno. The wailing husband burns alive right alongside the corpses. And wow, this beautifully, horribly connects the dots back to the very first red flag, that smell of burnt flesh in the damp air when Raghu arrived.
And then, Ratan delivers the final, absolute crushing detail of his story. He states that this horrifying event happened exactly 3 years ago. This is the exact moment the puzzle pieces forcefully lock together for Raghu. The slashed throat of the wife, the swinging man, the unblinking lantern. The man he is sitting next to in the dead of night isn't just some storyteller. He is the murderer who burned alive.
Against all odds, Raghu somehow survives until dawn and flees. But as he realizes he left his money bag behind and turns back, the grand illusion completely shatters. He expects a warm tea stall, but instead, the daylight reveals the terrifying reality. There is no tea stall. There is only the charred, blackened skeleton of a hut that clearly burned to the ground years ago.
As he's standing there staring at the ashes, completely, utterly bewildered, a voice cuts sharply right through the morning air behind him. "Are you looking for this?" He whips around to see who on earth is holding his forgotten money bag.
Standing right there is the figure of the woman. The daylight offers absolutely no safety, no refuge. The morning wind shifts her veil one last time, and that smell of rotting blood hits him like a physical blow. The woman with the slashed throat, Jumar, stands before him, her horrifying blood-soaked face stretched into this wide, unnatural smile right there in the unforgiving morning sun. The shock is absolute, and Raghu just collapses, totally unconscious, onto the dirt road.
We've really broken down the anatomy of this trap today, haven't we? From the blinding storm to the ignored warnings to the lingering ghosts of a totally brutal crime. So I leave you with this final thought. The next time you find yourself stranded, desperate for shelter, and a stranger offers you refuge from the dark, will you remember to check if the lamp flickers in the wind? Thank you so much for exploring this with me. Until next time, stay observant and stay safe.